Alright, I thought I would make a video because there's a false prophet or antichrist individual named Kevin M. Young, who I initially confused with Kevin D. Young, because that's the name I commonly hear from Doug Wilson talking about various things and so on. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, this guy's got a lot of subscribers and stuff. And it's like, okay, he's got about 28,000 subscribers on Twitter and stuff. And I was like, okay, it's probably the same guy and so on. But no, it's actually a different person than Kevin D. Young that Doug Wilson talks about. It's Kevin M. Young. And he's a bit of an antichrist, to be honest. What do I mean by that? Well, it's really simple. He's trash talking evangelicals as non-Christians because they have nothing to do with Jesus and they should be Kirkers, as if they're like supporting Charlie Kirk, or maybe it's Christ, what was it called? Christ Church, Kirk Church, Doug Wilson's church. So whether it's Doug Wilson's church or it's Charlie Kirk, he's saying you're not Christian if you are aligned in that regard and so on. Now, I pointed out to him because I saw a pride flag in his bio. I asked about what Romans 1 says about homosexuals, or Leviticus, or what the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is about, or what St. Augustine thought of Jupiter. And I'll answer that one. He thought he talked about the poets of Rome at the time making Jupiter out to be a pederast, which is basically a pedophile except gay. And I kind of was like just poking at it and the virtue signaling and so on. But there's an added dimension to this, which is the rainbow flag is literally called the pride flag. And this Kevin M. Young is calling other people not Christian while openly declaring himself pro-pride. And if you don't know why pride is so important to Christianity, basically what it means is pride is the thing that makes every other sin happen in Christianity. It's pride comes before the fall. It's the first sin ever is pride. It's what makes Satan Satan. It's what makes Adam and Eve fall from grace out of the paradise, the Garden of Eden. Pride is the first sin that everything else evil comes from in some sense. And this Kevin M. Young proudly declares himself pro-pride and uses pronouns in his bio. So the homosexual and the pride element is combined in him, and both go against Christian teachings in some way or other. Now, Leviticus is a bit harsh. That's the Old Testament. But Romans 1 still talks harshly about it without advocating doing anything necessarily yourself about it happening and so on. And that's the new covenant. New covenant means the new agreement with God that God will fulfill even if you don't. So that's the new agreement with God. let God handle punishing homosexuality in as far as it's wicked or evil. And it's a strong relationship to evil ways of being and stuff like that. There's a trend towards evil in homosexuality, but it's not necessarily totally evil, if that makes sense. Like, it might be a sin technically, but I personally would go with Andrew Clavin's approach, where like it's one sin amongst many possible sins and so on. However, the fact is that Kevin M. Young blocked me and called me a groiper because I pointed out the biblical passages and early church fathers on homosexuality that he's proudly there's a word, demonstrating or declaring himself for, and so on. And the sin of pride, like, it's just like it just, how can someone call themselves Christian and not know pride is the biggest sin of all, and then declare themselves for pride and still call others non-Christian and themselves Christian? And I checked out his bio and stuff, and he's like, oh, I know all about the early church fathers, and I'm a reverend, and stuff like that. And it's like, seriously? That's the quality of Christian leadership we have? I mean, Christ on a cross. That's some pretty poor leadership, But he's got his ego wrapped up in, like, being a fitness trainer and stuff like that, too, and so on, And it's just like, this guy's an egotistical prick. Yeah. So yeah, beware of the antichrist of Kevin M. Young and so on. Don't follow his teaching. Don't listen to him unless you mean to instruct on his errors. The man is twisted beyond repair by humans, and he seems to be rejecting God's offer of redemption as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't listen to him. Someone might say I'm not the best example of a success maker myself, and that's sort of true, but I've been through more hardship than he has, I'm sure. And I've survived it, which is something. But, for a guy who talks about the need to reform yourself in Christ and sell books based on his credentials, he's a bit of a false teacher in some sense. Keep in mind, it's Kevin M. Young, not Kevin D. Young. That's the problem. Kevin D. Young is on a relatively friendly basis, I think, if I remember correctly, from Doug Wilson and so on, who's a reasonably Christian individual, pretty good Christian, with a lot of common sense. Kevin M. Young is the miniature Antichrist, in essence. He's an Antichrist, one of many. Well, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. What can I say? So, I'm just sending this warning out to people so they don't fall into his trap and get their souls damned to hell for eternity and so on. Hope you learn something from this, and hope you guard your hearts. And Beware the false prophets.